Let me ask you guys a question. Could there be anything good coming out of this? Any news that's coming up for Trump besides the fact that he's now finally going to read a book? Is there anything
if he reads it
about, you know?
I actually think I was listening to a podcast and the argument was could be arguably the best thing that's happened to the White House because this was, for all intents and purposes, a Steve Bannon book. I mean, he authorized, 95% of these interviews. And this is a guy, Steve Bannon, who is hated by Democrats, many Republicans, for pushing this. Pushing this nationalist populist movement. So now he's the guy that encouraged Trump to say many sides when it came to Charlottesville. He's the guy that encouraged Trump to back Roy Moore. He's the guy that encouraged Trump to formulate the travel ban and push it through without really getting any sort of expertise and advice from the legal team. Right. So the fact that he's now, this is a clean divorce from a man that's really vilified, a man that's hated on many sides, I think could be a good thing. You don't want to be associated with Steve Bannon, and you could make the case that the White House is much better without Steve Bannon.
We'll see.
I think the world is much better without Steve Bannon whispering in Donald Trump's ear. But look, Democrats should not hate Steve Bannon. They have a Senate seat from Alabama because of Steve Bannon. I think Donald Trump should have an issue with Steve Bannon. He's been publicly attacking his children. Nothing in this book is terribly new. That's part of the reason why, for me, it is so credible. Surely he might have taken the author some liberties, but is it news to anybody that Jeff Sessions recusing himself drives Trump cuckoo crazier? Is it, news to anybody that there's chaos in that White House? Is it news to anybody that they leak like cheesecloth? I mean, none of this
is it interesting to anybody that Rupert Murdoch called him an idiot, Tillerson called him a moron, his financial advisor, Gary Cohn, called him a clown, Priebus called him an idiot, McMaster called him a dope. These are the people who are helping him.
They were just quoting him.
No, they're not just quoting me. These are the people, and he has this on tape probably.
And those
are
if he has it on tape, then we need to hear it.
The question is, does his base care? Does his base care about all of us getting up in a tizzy? Rightfully so. This is a very salacious, juicy book. Do his supporters care? I was at home in Arizona, and I know you don't like to hear this and be reminded that he has a dedicated base, but I was home in Arizona.
Why do you say we don't want to hear it? I love to hear it.
Okay, great. I was in Cottonwood, Arizona, going to Walmart, stopped at the gas station. There was a guy in a Make America Great Again hat. Go to that Walmart, Make America Great Again hats. It's over a year
but that's
out, and his supporters.
Of the population, Megyn.
But he has a very dedicated base, and their base, by the way, was enough to get him elected the first time. So will it be enough to get him elected the second time?
The base has been very torn.
Literally, I'm just trying to explain to you that he has a base of dedicated supporters, and the things that we in the media care about. I don't know if necessarily the average person who sees the Dow up, who sees the unemployment rates at an all-time low, if they care in the same way. Maybe they will.
I give average Americans more credit than that, Megyn. I think people are watching. I think people are reading. And I think people, wait a second, I think people are very concerned that he's playing chicken with Kim Jong-un. I think people are concerned about their children.
But we're talking about his base.
I'm talking about his base.
But his base is only 30% of the population. What about the other 70% of the population that are watching and listening? They don't care about
his base, and I think it's the point that Paula made. This base was really torn between Trump and Bannon. We saw it, for example, in the Alabama primary, where Bannon was supporting, Roy Moore, who ended up being the winner of the primary, and Trump was supporting Luther Strange, who was actually normal despite his last name, given the whole field. And so Steve Bannon is a Pied Piper who has had the Republican base following him and throwing themselves off a cliff like a bunch of lemmings. So and now a lot of folks have got to pick between Trump and Bannon.
So you're saying that the base is going to dwindle down to maybe 20% pretty soon?
No, I think the base is going to stick with Trump.
I do too.
We're seeing it happen with...
What happened to the Bannon people? They're just going to... What are they going to become, Democrats?
I think if it's between Bannon or Trump, they're going to go with Trump. He's the president. He's a lot better craftier at communicating with that base. Does it through
Trump
Twitter.
And who else is the question, too? Like, even in the base of supporters, they're still going to go with a Republican. They're still going to go with Trump over Democratic.
Why do you feel comfortable with the minority dictating to the majority what should happen in this country? Because that's the minority. I don't feel comfortable with that.
I'm just trying to constantly explain it. And I think when you say things like, oh, I'd give the American people more credit, that means that everyone who voted for Trump, you're basically saying, oh, I give them no credit.
you voted for
These people
Trump-
who voted for Trump because your values aren't my values, you're not in the majority or whatever. And I was,
If you
for the
voted for
record,
Trump and you are not concerned, I am concerned about that.
I was a never Trumper. You know what?
I'm concerned.
I was a never Trumper. I was someone who have a lot of grave questions about President Trump.
Right.
But after the election, I choose to try and understand his base and why they're so angry and why they're still sticking with him. He has the same approval rate on the election day that he does now.
The note to the Democrats is forget those people. You're never going to get them. So just concentrate on the 70% and get those people to the polls next November and save the country.
Look,
That's how I feel.
To me, the note to the Democrats is to look at Virginia, to look at Alabama, and get their base out in the same way that Donald Trump was able to get the Republican base
That's
out.
right.
A lot of African Americans, a lot of Hispanics, a lot of women stayed home, in, a year ago. That could have made a difference.
Black women saved Alabama. They can save the country.
For someone, the question I have though is, like, when I hear you talk, Anna, does that mean you prefer Democratic candidates now? Because I haven't, like, just because I'm not a
Megan,
Trumper, it
to a-
doesn't mean I'm a Democrat.
No, listen, to
the
Donald
way you
Trump,
sound right
I
now-
would prefer a potted plant
I'm
to
talking
Donald
about
Trump.
local candidates.
I would prefer a
But he is-
mannequin
but
to
he
Donald
is a
Trump.
potted plant.
But I'm talking about the Senate. I wasn't talking about the presidency, like Senate elections. When you're
Oh,
talking
hell
about
yes.
Senate
If I
and-
have to choose between a pedophile or Doug Jones, who's a Democrat, I'll
not
take the Democrat. I mean, but those are the choices we've had
you?
in front
Between
of
a
us.
pedophile and a
Or
Democrat?
a pedophile, but I think that there's maybe this misunderstanding that because you're not a Trump supporter, that automatically you're a liberal. And there is a lot of gray in between. I even think
But
for
don't
liberals,
you
there's a
agree
lot
that
of
the
gray in
Republican
between.
Party is no longer the party of Ronald Reagan and Eisenhower? Come on.
We're having an internal,
I think
battle
that
about
I
that.
have never felt more defensive of Trump's base. I've never felt more conservative, and I've never felt more defensive of the middle of the country than I have since I started working on this show.
You know, Linda, well, of course, because we're on the other side, so of course you're going to react to that.
Listen,
right?
to me, it has just stopped being.
And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just have a whole new understanding of what it feels like to sort of be lectured to about our values.
We gotta get less
They feel
stuck. I think we gotta be less stuck on labels and look more at the individual candidates. When you are,
Who's lecturing you, Megan? Who's lecturing you?
No, I think
I
it's
didn't
just
mean
this
lectures, I mean
general.
sharing different
They
opinions.
feel marginalized.
But what
Yes, you feel marginalized.
But to Anna's point, which I think is such an important one, when you have a choice between an alleged pedophile and a man who put KKK members in prison as the U.S. Attorney of Alabama, there is no real choice.
Country
People
above
need
party.
to put country before party.
Well, that's what they
what's your
did. That's what they did in Alabama.
Well, I don't know why you're. I mean, he lost.
That's what they
Like
did
your
in
candidate
Alabama.
won.
Yeah, we know.
So,
And
what's the? I don't understand what the argument still is.
We have to go. We'll be right back.